From Studio 3C in Rockefeller Center, this is Today in New York.
Coming up after the break, recapping the most outstanding stories of 2012.
Some of them you may never have heard of. Others, of course, you will never forget. Today in New York is coming right back.
Welcome back. What do you remember most about 2012? From the beginning of new trends to the possible end of the world, this year was full of too many outstanding moments to count, and that's where the World Almanac comes in. Sarah Janssen is the senior editor of the World Almanac. She's here with some of the most standout stories of 2012. Some of you may never heard of, others will probably never forget. Let's start with the story that, as you look out on everything, dominated 2012 the most, and that was the run for the presidency.
Yes, obviously the most talked about news story of the year. You really couldn't get away from it, even if you wanted to. President Barack Obama, of course, was reelected, and we'll look forward to his inauguration in 2013.
What was interesting is that election, though, was sandwiched between so many other stories. We've almost seemed to have moved on to that because Sandy became such a big story, too.
Absolutely. In late October, Sandy came storming up the East Coast, and really, deaths in 9 states. Over 100 people died, tens of thousands of people still homeless. It's, something that we're going to be recovering from for a long time.
Let's talk about a better story. We also had, and it's just when you sit here, you realize how much happened in 2012. We had the Olympics that dominated the summer.
A huge story this summer. It was so much fun to watch. Michael Phelps, of course, set the career Olympic medals record with 22, so he's got a few to spare, a few lying around. And of course, Gabby Douglas, other great American Olympians. It was just a really great, fun story to watch.
Now, when you're figuring out how stories dominate certain things or certain categories, how do you quantify that? Are you going through newspapers, media, social media? What's the process for the World Almanac?
It's kind of a combination of all of those things. We're tracking lots of different sources all year round, all of the authoritative sources, of course, but of course social media is becoming so huge you can't ignore all of these news sources. So it becomes a balancing act of making sure that we're including news sources as well as the old authoritative ones.
And they kind of come all together in the Almanac there.
They all come together, exactly.
Remember, Facebook had a big day on Wall Street. Talk about that.
Yes, one of the biggest news stories in the business world, at least this year, was the Facebook IPO. It had been much anticipated. Did not exactly go according to plan, though. It was still the 3rd biggest IPO ever, but there were some hiccups along the way in both on the exchange and, the value just kept declining for a while. So we'll be looking at that in 2013 also.
What are people saying about that now? That was such a big deal when it happened, and it's I don't hear as much about it right now.
Huge deal, yes. And I think that, you're going to keep looking at it as all of these other tech IPOs are happening because they're sort of an example that they've set for all of these other companies.
Let's also talk about the post-Napster religion. What is that?
This is just one of those weird stories that we had to include because it's so bizarre. The government of Sweden actually recognized a new religion in 2012 that is based on the premise that information is holy.
Okay, let's go. Forgive me, I'm a simple man.
Yes.
Information is
holy.
Holy, okay,
so
and it's a religion too.
Right.
And this is hold on, okay.
File sharing is the sacrament, and as such, all file sharing should be legal.
Okay.
So you should be able to download that copy of Game of Thrones for free.
Oh, I see. You're getting around some copyright intellectual. Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do a couple of words. Apparently, these are words that have been added to the dictionary this year. Got to have some fun with these. An aha moment.
An aha moment.
Which is?
A moment of revelation.
And this is new for 2012.
It's new for 2012. Some of these you don't expect would be brand new. Like man cave, for example, has been sort of in the vernacular for a while, but it's been officially added in 2012.
We also said boomerang child was another one?
Boomerang child is a young adult who returns to live in their childhood home, much to maybe their parents' chagrin or pleasure, depending.
Oh, I'm sure my mom would love that to happen.
It really just depends.
Oh, yeah. And M-commerce.
M-commerce. So that's any commerce that's taking place on mobile devices, and that's just exploding and was added to the dictionary in 2012.
And we were just mentioning it there, but let's go to man cave if we can. This is the, if you're lucky enough, this is sort of the room or space design. This is 2012? This seems very, I don't know, a couple of years ago.
If you've got that extra room in your house and you want to have it designated for the man in the house, then you can do that.
What surprised you most as you were putting together the World Almanac this year? I mean, some of these are obvious, the information, religion thing, I still don't totally pretend to understand, but what struck you most as it was all coming together?
You know, it's always a surprise to see the year that was come together and see how many big things happened. It wasn't just the election in Sandy. You also had these horrible shootings. You also had all of these international events that are going to affect the world in 2013. What's going on in Egypt and Libya and all of the Middle Eastern countries. It's surprising to see how much changes through the course of the year, and I think it's fun at the end of the year to look back and see, you know, how is it going to affect next year?
That should be interesting. A little bit of context, always good. Thanks very much. Well, for more top news stories and fascinating facts, just grab a copy of the World Almanac and Book of Facts 2013, wherever books are sold. Pat, back over to you.
Fascinating stuff, Gus. Thank you. And there's still a lot more ahead.